Hey, welcome in back at it. Monday. Every Monday, 7 o'clock. Forgot I had those on. All of you that have been waiting for that DJ Uyunglele showdown with Clemson, not happening. Not happening. Um, I don't know. And I know a lot of you guys up there are still without power and stuff, didn't have power over the weekend, might not have watched the Florida State SMU game. DJ leaves that game, after throwing a pick six, hurts his hand. Reports have come out in the last hour or so that broke a finger on that hand and is expected to miss a few weeks. Make of that what you will. Norvell said after the game that he was pulling DJ out at that point either way. Brock Glenn comes in. He's no better. He goes 0 for 4, passing in relief of DJ. Not that the game was already over, but all that to say, you're not going to get that DJ Clemson matchup that a lot of people were hoping to see. That's a bad Florida State team. It's that they're just bad. And if you've spent a lot of time on Twitter, man, the SMU fan base have been trolling the Seminoles hard, and it's been hilarious. Good to see Clemson, struggle a little bit Saturday and come through that thing and still, probably bring your, C plus game and still win 40-14. That's good to see. Good to see that offense struggle a little bit, particularly in that first half, and then still hit some big plays enough to pull away and win convincingly. To me, that's a sign of growth. Didn't think Klubnik had his best game throwing the ball underthrew, a couple of passes. The most notable one was the one to I'm Bryant Wesco there. Sorry, I'm trying to watch the end of the Braves game here while I'm doing this at the same time. But the most notable one, the pass to Wesco there, if he hits him in stride, it's an easy touchdown. I thought the pass with Maffa, if he lets go of it a little bit, just a split second quicker, man, he's got him there. And instead, he he waited too long. The safety ends up over there, but still not a bad game. It wasn't a bad game from him, just not what we've seen the past two games. And to me, one of the biggest things is his ability to make plays with his legs. He takes a, and there it is. The Braves win. They're going to the playoffs. We'll see what kind of run they can make. But, the ability to make plays with his legs, I think the weight gain has helped him. He's gotten stronger. He doesn't go down so easily, and he's able to be a difference in the running game. I think that's one of the biggest signs of growth with him, and it helps the offense because now you got to account for him. He's a threat. He can make plays with his legs, so you can't just assume he's not going to run. He's got to be accounted for at all times. I'm going to jump with this one here first. Gamecock fans trolling online about Clemson playing the game Saturday night. South Carolina would have played if they were playing at home this past weekend. Absolutely 100%. South Carolina would have played this weekend. And it's not just South Carolina fans. There are Clemson fans out there. There's a lot of virtue signaling going on out there. Multiple clout chasers online trying to drag the university for holding this game on Saturday night. If you're Clemson, you're trying to make the best of a bad situation, right? The ESPN's been in town since before the storm came through. Stanford wasn't able to they were supposed to come in Thursday, had some issues with their flight, not weather related from what I'm told. And it had to be, it wasn't until Friday about 7 o'clock when they got to town. So they get to town about 24 hours before kickoff. They fly all the way across country to play. You're going to cancel on them once they get there. I don't know. I think having the game was the absolute right thing to do. I keep seeing all this talk about how the school pulled resources away from other areas that need it. And I don't understand that. There were far less troopers at the game Saturday for anybody that went there. and goes regularly, you just driving in, it's very obvious there were far less troopers there. And I actually asked someone to confirm it there, and they say, yeah. And it's not like state troopers are going to be out working on the power lines, restoring power. They're not going to be doing rescue missions. So you're not pulling those guys away from those kind of things. It's not like firemen are at the game, being pulled away from doing whatever they do during these kinds of things. I'm sure there were a handful of EMTs there, probably that were already regularly scheduled to be there. Talked to a lot of people that work the games, particularly that work with the Rhino. I think it's Rhino Security. They were grateful the game was played. They needed a escape for a little while. Talked to a bunch of fans that felt the same way, but not everybody did. And I get it, man. It's kind of a, again, you're trying to make the best of a bad situation. But if you want evidence that the right thing was done, look at the crowd. I was kind of expecting the crowd to maybe be the stadium to be 2/3 full at best. I get there and it's jam packed. There were, the number was 80,000 something. I thought it was about 78, but the actual number is 80,000, 80 plus. That tells you right there that Clemson did the right thing. And I get it, man. People are talking about that the fans come in, taking the gas and the ice. Well, the ice is going to get scooped up regardless if fans come in for a football game. I saw, places were running out of ice early Friday, over 24 hours ahead of that game. When I left town Sunday morning, there were still, I passed several gas stations that were open that had gas. It's not like everybody was out of gas. That the fan base came in here and sucked up all the gas from the local guys or for the local people. They were long lines. Now, don't get me wrong. The lines were long. You were going to have to wait for it. But it's not like every gas station was out of gas. There were plenty of us. I did see one place. It was a BP just outside of Greenville that had jacked the price up to $3.49 a gallon, but that's a whole different discussion. So there was gas available. It ain't like the fans came in here and took all the gas and took all the ice. Those are the kind of things that are going to be scarce regardless. I was there. I went to town ahead of the storm, so I was there when it came through, and it reminded me of when Hugo came through Florence. Don't think the winds were quite as strong as what we experienced here with Hugo, but it was very similar sounding. The condo I stay in had damage next door, tree through the front window. Fortunately, my buddy's place didn't get messed up, but I saw a lot of damage on my drive out yesterday. I saw a half a dozen power poles just snapped in half. And probably most of you have seen it, but I actually wrote a column on the site yesterday. I thought playing the game was the right thing to do. Of the people that I've talked to, it's probably been about a 90-10 split, 90% in favor, 10% against. And there's been a couple, handful of Clemson fans on Facebook, Twitter, just hammering Clemson. A lot of Gamecock fans hammering Clemson. Make no mistake, South Carolina would have played a game yesterday. Or Saturday. South Carolina State played a game. Citadel played a game. Matter of fact, they hosted East Tennessee, who had the bus from Tennessee. They spent the night on a bus the night before the game, went down to Charleston and smoked the Citadel. I think Furman played, if I'm not mistaken. Furman played a home game Saturday. The Braves played Saturday in Atlanta. The Panthers and Falcons both played yesterday. I get it, different states, different areas, but nobody's hammering on those guys for playing on the weekend of a major storm. For some reason, the area of focus is solely placed on Clemson, and I don't understand it. I understand the Gamecock people, don't get me wrong, but I don't understand it from the I don't understand the hate I'm seeing from some of the Clemson people, man. Again, I think a lot of it's clout chasing. It's engagement farming, looking for clicks and likes and just trying to drive up engagement. That is what I think a lot of this was about from the Clemson fans that have been piling on. I stand by what I said. I think it was the absolute right thing to do. people needed a break from what they were going through, and nobody made anybody go to the games. You had a choice. If you couldn't go, give your tickets to somebody else who could. And I think a lot of that went on. Again, over 80,000 people there. Somebody's telling me it was Wofford play. Wofford or Furman play. I couldn't remember which one. I knew one of them did. But yeah, again, I absolutely believe it was the right thing to do, man. I absolutely believe it was the right thing to do. Just give people a break from the harsh realities they are facing, even if it's only for a few hours. You know, that's the way I look at it. I've seen some people saying, well, if they can't have classes, why should they have a game? Again, going to a game's voluntary. Class, you are required to attend or you are penalized. So, professors have to be in class, and there are a lot of people that still can't get to campus due to, the damage. Again, the game's voluntary. Nobody's making you go. Classes you are required to attend. I think people are kind of comparing apples and oranges there. But again, I just think it's a lot of clout chasing and then a lot of hate from rival fan bases. That's kind of how I look at that, man. Nick says he's listening as he's flying home from Clemson. Love the show. Appreciate that, man. Safe flight. How good is the backup QB at Florida State? Probably going to replace DJ. No, probably about it. Looks like that's a done deal, seeing the reports that have come out in the last hour and a half. We saw Brock Glenn last year when Jordan Travis got injured. And that Florida State offense was not, very – it wasn't great, man. They were not very good once Travis went down on the offensive side of the ball. Same guy, Brock Glenn. They do have a true freshman on the bench who I think at least one service had him rated as a 5-star, but apparently Brock Glenn's going to be the guy. They put out their depth chart today, and on the depth chart it's Uiagalelei or Brock Glenn. So if Uiagalelei can't go, it looks like it's Glenn, although – you can't put a whole lot of stock in depth charts. And even Mike Norvell made that pretty clear today. But I don't know that, I think if Brock Glenn was that much better than what they've already had, you'd have already seen them make that switch. We're 5 games in now. DJ's thrown more interceptions than touchdowns. He's completing barely over 50% of his passes. So that's kind of how I look at that. If he was that much better than what they were already running out there, he'd have already been out there. So I still think this is a dangerous game just because of how bad they've been. Still a lot of talent on that team, and you don't want to get caught up in overlooking this team because of how bad their record is and how bad they played. We've seen it time and time and time again over history. A bad team is able to get up for the right opponent. And, Clemson, Florida State, no matter which team you're talking about, that's always going to be the right opponent. Any word on Ashton Daniels? No, I have not heard anything about Ashton Daniels. I need to see if I can find out about that, and I have not done that today. The opt-outs continue to expand, John says. SMU cornerback has taken his own red shirt, sitting out the rest of the year. We're going to start seeing a little more of that, going forward. Probably some of what, even more of like we saw with the Boise State quarterback, especially when, I'd still love to know the truth of what happened there. You got one side claiming that promises weren't kept and the other side claiming that all, obligations were met. There's rumors that the quarterback went into the head coach's office that week and demanded more NIL money and he didn't get. Who knows what the truth is? especially these guys that have they're in their final year of eligibility and they are fringe NFL guys or guys that are not going to make it in the NFL and they have to cash in now until we get some, guardrails in place and some guidelines or something that can help push back against some of this. We're going to see more and more of that. Any threat of Clemson players possibly? No, I don't see any Clemson player opting out before a game Saturday. No. Andrew says hello from Hurricane Ravaged Waterloo, man. We love you, JP. Appreciate that. Yeah, I was my drive home yesterday was eye opening, man. I knew it was bad, but when you see it, and I was driving home from up there on the other side of Seneca, back to Florence, not even up into North Carolina. I can't even imagine seeing what's going on up there. But yeah, the damage was it's indescribable. If I would have tried to count the lines, not power lines hanging, but I'm talking about just laying on the ground, I'd have lost count well before I got to Greenville. And you didn't really start seeing a sense of normalcy until I got on the other side of Newberry. It's unreal. Hopefully, if you're sitting in the dark over there, you won't be much longer. I got a friend in Greenville who's still sitting in the dark. Said that he's been told Thursday for his power. I got a friend that actually lives up in Western North Carolina. They got a text, or excuse me, he's looking at being without power for a week. Talked to a guy in Clemson the other day who's from North Carolina, who's in the area working. He got a text from his power company saying it might be 3 to 4 weeks because all the infrastructure has been destroyed, just totally destroyed. So as bad as it was here in the upstate, it could have been a lot worse. But appreciate the kind words. FSU took a massive step backwards, not just in QB, but wide receiver and offensive line too. They backed off a cliff. They sure did. It just kind of, I just think it's another piece of evidence that, if you rely on the portal as heavily as Florida State has the past couple of years, there's no guarantee of what you're going to get. You don't know how those teams are going to gel until you get them on the field. And this one has not gelled. You brought in DJ, Mike Norvell was being called the quarterback whisperer and everything. And, again, I've said it 100 times. At this point, I just think DJ is what he is. And it's, we put the focus on him, but like John says, it's not just him. That offensive line's been bad. The wide receivers have not been very good. That defensive line, who was touted as being, some called it the best defensive line in the country over the offseason. That group has definitely not lived up to those expectations. It is, like you say, falling off a cliff. There's who would have thought going into the season Clemson was going to be a 2-touchdown favorite in Tallahassee? When the preseason lines came out, Florida State was a 3.5-point favorite. Jay says if FSU runs around the edges, he's going to lose it. Yeah, that is an area where Clemson struggled in the first half. Those inexperienced ends. I thought Cade Denoff really struggled in that area, but it wasn't just him. Even TJ Parker got, pulled in or sucked in and covered up and failed to set the edge more than once. Hoffler, same thing. Lawson, same thing. I thought they got it cleaned up in the third quarter there, but that first half, it was I know Dabo said after the game, and multiple players after the game also said that Stanford had run some stuff they weren't prepared for that they didn't see on film. But setting the edge is, that's kind of football 101. It's all about having your eyes in the right spot and not over pursuing. And those guys got caught doing that. Hopefully you get Woods back this week. I lean towards thinking they will, and you mitigate some of that. But at the same time, when guys like Hoffler and Lawson are out there kind of learning by fire, it'll grow them up faster too. Same thing with Dinoff. We know Dinoff's been there a while, but he's not played a ton. This was the second game ever starting, so. Have to feel good about your team getting a ton of good tape to coach with and still winning 40-14. Yeah, absolutely 100%. That's a little of what I was trying to allude to earlier. Might not have explained it very well, but yeah, it was good to see them, face some adversity and make some. There were some things that need to be cleaned up. Stanford's defensive line is legit. They are very good against the run. Clemson ended up, the numbers, the final numbers probably don't tell you exactly how tough rushing yards were to come by in that first half. Right before Phil Maffa broke off that long run late in the first half, he was averaging less than a yard per carry. Stanford was giving up 2.2 yards per carry coming into the game. So, I mean, it's most teams have had issues running against him. I thought Clemson would probably struggle to run a little bit, at least early. Thought this was the worst game from the offensive line so far. And that's not to say that it was a bad game by that group. I'm just saying I thought they've played better in the first three games than they did in this one. But, yeah, it goes back to your point. There's a lot of stuff on tape that you can coach off of with this game. Looks like a lot of balls to wide open receivers were underthrown. Yeah, I thought Klubnik underthrew, some Saturday night. I also thought there was a couple of instances where he missed a couple of guys that were open. On the pick, I think it was Olsen Pat Henry running wide open, and he didn't see him. But the underthrown balls, that was kind of a theme in the first half Saturday. There were definitely more than one. I had somebody, telling me because he doesn't have a strong arm. Coleman doesn't have elite level arm strength or anything like that, but he's got the arm. He's got enough arm to make all those throws. He's just got a little bit better knowing how much to put on it. I do think he's done a little bit better of a job this year of not having so much air under some of those deep balls. He still puts some air on them, but I don't think it's as much as he was last year. Worst thing about the internet, it makes everybody an expert in every opinion the most important. That it does, man. It's just, I don't know, man. I don't want to say too much here, but there's just some people online, man, particularly on Facebook that I think are chasing clout and chasing clicks and likes and shares and that kind of thing. And some of them want to feel important, feel like they are that guy or that woman or whatever. And I think that leads to a lot of this. And it's one thing. It's one thing to say, hey, I don't think Clemson should have played the other night, but it's another thing to hammer on it, over and over and over and over and post it in every Clemson Facebook group. And then, you've got some examples of Clemson fans hammering on saying Clemson doesn't care about the community. They don't have any, compassion. They're playing a football game. I saw that kind of stuff from Clemson fans. To me, that's just taking it a little far, man, and it's just absurd. Was concerned about the defense giving up run yards, but made adjustments in the second half. Yeah, they were much better in that third quarter before Clemson started sending in the subs in the fourth. again, I think it's all. I think it's actually not so much about the scheme or the game plan. Those ends just have to be better at setting the edge and not letting the quarterback or the running backs or whoever's running the ball, have so much open space on the outside. You got to contain those guys. You got to force them to cut it back in and let your linebackers do work. If you're giving up the outside run that much and not setting the edge, you're going to give up a lot of rushing yards. That's something they got to get cleaned up this week. I do think getting Peter Woods back would be a big help. But even he got exposed a little bit in that second half against Georgia. He, as fast as he is, he's not the fastest of defensive ends. He's extremely quick for a defensive tackle, but maybe not so much for a defensive end, although he's still pretty dang quick. They kind of used that against him a little bit in that Georgia game. So, I mean, it's not like he's had, perfect results when it comes to set the edge either, but it'll definitely mitigate some of that when you get him back. Some of the best games so far this year were played this past weekend: Miami, Virginia Tech, and Bama, Georgia. Yeah, I didn't get to watch much of, any of Bama, Georgia. We were keeping up with it, there in the press box. We got to watch a little teeny bit if we went to the bathroom, a couple plays here and there. And then we were keeping up with it while we were waiting on Dabo in the post game. But that seemed like a wild one. I did get to watch Miami, Virginia Tech. Went somewhere where they had power and got to watch that one. And it's like I said last week, I knew Miami's offense was legit. Cam Moore's legit. But I was not convinced that defense was as elite as it's looked. And Virginia Tech, didn't have a whole lot of issues moving the ball on them. I don't know. Let me start this by saying I don't think the guy caught the ball at the end. But there's no – if you call it a touchdown on the field, I don't know how you overturn that. There's no indisputable evidence either way of a catch or an incompletion. And the statement the ACC put out was an absolute joke about how they determined that the Miami defender touched it while he was out of bounds. Once the guy – if you determine that the guy comes down with the ball, once he comes down with it, that's a catch. That's a touchdown. It don't matter what, as long as he comes down in bounds. If a Miami player touches it after that and he's out of bounds, it don't matter. I didn't understand that statement at all. But you got to feel for those Virginia Tech players. It's got to feel like they had one stole from them. But that Miami defense, it might not. It looked like it could be had in that game the other night. Again, Tech was able to move the ball. I hated the decision to go for the fake field goal there. Just go ahead and kick it and take the points, and you're up big. That's kind of putting your foot on their throat there a little bit. Gave Miami some momentum back. That holding call that brought a touchdown back was a joke. Just would have liked to see Virginia Tech win that thing, man. But I just get the feeling that it was decided that, hey, man, we can't have Miami lose this game. We need them to stay unbeaten. That's kind of what it feels like. And back to that review, if it takes you 5 minutes to review a play, you don't have enough to overturn it. You got to let it stand, man. It was a complete joke the way that the whole ending was handled. Brady says he remembers Hugo 135-mile-an-hour winds in Georgetown. Did not get power back till 14 days later. Clemson did the right thing, playing the game, screw what people think. Yeah, here in Florence, we didn't have winds that strong. But it sounded like a freight train going by my house all night long. And it was similar to that where I was up in the upstate, Friday morning, just before daylight. I don't know if the winds were quite as strong as what they were here in Florence when Hugo came through, but they were pretty dang close. This one seemed to move through quicker than Hugo did, even though Hugo moved through pretty quick. And yeah, I remember people going without power for a couple of weeks in Florence, the rural areas. Um, we, my family where we live specifically, I don't think we went more than a day. Yeah, I do remember kids I went to school with didn't have it for a week or two, and might be some of the similar situations up there in Clemson. Mike says Hoffler and Denoff kept crashing in, not taking the QB, which opened things up on the edge. Rump could have took it defensive end. That was plug and play. Uh, uh, I think end was a position Clemson could have looked at in the portal. I've talked about that before, but now you got who you got. Hoffler's a redshirt freshman. I think he's going to be good. He's just now starting to get his feet wet with playing time and stuff, and he'll learn from it and grow from it. I think Denoff kind of is what he is at this point. But once you get Woods back, it's going to mitigate some of that too. And I think you'll see him start to improve there in that area. It might not be a night and day improvement from one week to the next, but I think you'll see the more those guys play, the better they'll be. But I'm anybody that's watched this show since its inception knows how high I've been on H.A. Hoffler. I think he's going to end up being a really good player. I know a lot of people agree with you on the Miami Virginia Tech review, and I think Jim Phillips had his hand in it trying to keep Miami relevant. You keep them unbeaten. You keep people talking about them. You keep getting them in the right television time slots. It all equates to, better ratings. A little bit more money. Everything always comes down to the dollar, and ultimately it's about. I know you got to know Jim Phillips wants to get two teams into the playoff, and the best way to do that is to have Miami run the table, because I guess you could plug in any ACC team that's still unbeaten, plug them in. It looks like Miami's got the best shot. So yeah, I believe if a review takes more than a minute or two, you don't have enough. Once you've looked at all the angles a couple of times, if you can't decide by then, that should tell you everything you need to know right there. And the fact that they did not decide it on the field and send it back to Charlotte to let them decide, that speaks volumes. I mean, it's just why not let those officials on the field make the call? And if they don't want to make it, tell them that's their damn job. That's what you're there to do. Make the call. The way that game ended was a joke. Even with Woods back, still wonder if they need an extra linebacker or safety playing closer to protect the edge. I liked the way Clemson's defense played Saturday night when they had three linebackers in the game. We've talked about this before, about how Clemson's going to this, more of a 4-2-5 look instead of having a Will linebacker, a Mike linebacker, and a Sam linebacker. Instead of the Sam, they have a nickel. Shelton Lewis has been playing a lot of nickel last year. Khalil Barnes played a lot of nickel. I'm wondering if they'll toy with the idea of going back to maybe three backers. And especially as fast as Sammy Brown's developing. Barrett Carter has played Sam before. He can move Woodaz back outside, let Sammy play to Mike or whichever, because whichever one he's better at. I think he's probably taken most of his reps at Mike so far, so that might be where he's most comfortable. But, man, he was really good Saturday. For the limited snaps he played, he had a couple of sacks. I don't even think he played 15 snaps, and he had 2 sacks and 2 or 3 tackles for loss. He was I think he was the highest graded freshman of the week by PFF. So it'll be interesting to see if they're kind of toying with that a little bit, maybe going back and running three backers out there more than they have. Mike says Miami will lose to Louisville. Nick says second and third string are going to need a lot of tape review and weight room. I think you can say that a lot about a lot of the guys not into too deep, and even some of the second string guys. A lot of the yards and stuff Clemson's given up in those games against App State and North Carolina State came with third and fourth string and walk on guys on the field. Now, against Stanford, again, they gave up a lot of rushing yards in the first half with the starters on the field. I think it was, I've said it many times here, I think it was due to not setting the edge. They had a lot of success running around the outside. But oh man, I don't forgot what I was saying. I lost my train of thought there. But weight room, and a lot of tape review. That's how you get those guys grown up. Get them out there, let them play some garbage time minutes, and you got film to coach off of. John's got his Sammy stats here. It was 15 snaps, 2 sacks, 4 tackles, and the 2 TFLs. Yeah, that's not a bad day at the office. Love the show, but the 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock frame, Paul, makes my skin itch. Yeah, that's not framed. Somebody painted that. It's just a painting. It's not a framed picture. This is not going to be a popular opinion, but me personally, I don't care which. I get it. It's supposed to be at 1 o'clock, man. But if somebody's magnet on their car ain't at 1 o'clock, I don't care, man. To me, it should be about whether they're a fan or not. I'm definitely not in favor of embarrassing people on Twitter or calling them out because their magnet might be placed at the wrong angle. Go over there and tell them. Don't take their picture and call them out on Twitter. Go tell them, man. They might not even know. I remember for a long time, I didn't even know, that it was supposed to be at 1 o'clock. And then even after I knew, I didn't know why for a while. But yeah, somebody painted that. It's just a painting. Like I said, that won't be a popular opinion, but I've never had a big issue with whether the Paul was, don't get me wrong. If it's something official, absolutely needs to be painted, tilted at 1 o'clock. But, as far as the magnets on the cars and things, I bought a used truck one time and it had a tiger paw in each corner on the back glass. One of them was, angled at 1 o'clock, and the other one was angled at 11 o'clock. So both of them faced inward. I left it that way. I left them on there. Bobby Meekins next door over in Dillon, home of the Wildcats. Loves the show. Appreciate it. Nicholas says, set the edge, not in. Not sure what you mean there. I might have missed something else up there in the comments, but a lot of times it's up to the end to set the edge. Would they have let Clemson or FSU win like they did to you? I think if you're the ACC and you've got a vested interest in a team, it's probably the team that's undefeated and looking for the, AQ. Now this is just, I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy most of the time. Every now and then, and this is one where I'm kind of buying in a little bit. if you've got Miami sitting here unbeaten and they look like your best shot to run the table and grab that AQ, yeah, maybe you side with them on some things. Would they have given it to Clemson or Florida State? This season, no. I think in the past, when Clemson was winning, making those playoff runs for 6 consecutive years and winning a couple of national titles, I do think the ACC did Clemson some favors in those years. I think they did them some favors with some scheduling to try to, make sure they locked up a playoff spot and those kind of things. And, I absolutely think those things happen. Clemson shouldn't need another linebacker when Woods is back. Him dealing with his edge allows rotation for a linebacker since they won't run to his side. Again, Woods has had some issues setting the edge at times too. It's not like he's been perfect in that regard. I still, if I'm just saying if it's a problem that persists, running a third linebacker is out there as an option. Speaking of linebackers, I thought Barrett Carter, man, was outstanding the other night. He just jumped off the field, man. When you're watching it live, in the right spot, it seemed like almost every time, man. And it's not something you can say about him every game. Okay, Nicholas, I see it now. I see what you mean. Yes, they did have some problems not setting the edge against Georgia. Timothy says, when are we going to get some of these injured players back? Keep hearing day by day. Dabo's starting to have some fun with this day-to-day stuff now. If you've not watched his post-game presser after the Stanford game, he knows. He's starting to have a little fun with it. Day to day, any day that ends with a Y. We're all day to day is what he said, actually. If a guy is hurt and not expected to miss more than 1, 2, 3 games, that's what you're going to get from Dabo day to day. That's all he's going to say. If it's a season-ending injury, he'll tell you. But outside of that, he doesn't say a whole lot about injuries. And I understand why. I get it. But if you're a fan or somebody covering the team, man, it's frustrating in that regard. I think it was last week when I said this, but I've said it one time before. I wish the ACC would adopt what the SEC's done and force coaches to disclose injuries, make them do an injury report. At Clemson, we just get a availability report 90 minutes before each game. And like last week, Tyler Brown wasn't on it. Yeah, he didn't play. And I don't think they thought he was going to play. I think he went out there and he was out there in the early pregame when they're out there in their warm-up clothes and doing a little stretching, but he never ran any routes or anything during pregame. So I don't think they ever expected him to play. But he wasn't listed as unavailable on the availability report. Again, I get why coaches do it. You don't want to tip your hand, but when you're a fan, it's frustrating not to know. Sounds like Stellato is going to miss games. Just kind of reading between the lines on what Dabo had to say Saturday night. He got hurt during practice last week. They thought it was going to be bad. And Dabo said they got, best case scenario news, but just kind of reading between the lines there, I think he's going to be out multiple games. I think Woods is going to be back this week. I think that's been the goal all along, is to make sure he's back by Florida State. Who else we got? Colin Sadler, I could see him being back this week, although, he's not a starter. Help me, who am I missing here? I know Wesco got a little banged up the other night, but he seems to be fine. Antonio got a little banged up. He seemed to be fine. Wesco got a little banged up the week before. Ended up being fine. I might be missing somebody. If you got somebody specific, let me know. I expect Williams and Antonio to play this week. Not Stellato. I'm leaning towards thinking Woods does. Want to know why the ACC Charlotte crew was active in making calls that weren't called, like the pass that was incomplete. Yeah, I'd like to know why they sent that to Charlotte instead of having the head official decide it on the field. If if you've ever attended a college football game and you watch the referee when a play goes to review, it's the head official that goes over there and looks at the replays most of the time and makes the call. In this case, it was sent to Charlotte for some reason. I don't know if Charlotte wanted them to send it to them or the refs on the field didn't want to make the call or what the reason was, but it ended up the call being made in Charlotte. And, you know, let's assume for a minute nothing shady went on. It's still suspicious looking. Yeah, I'd like to know the answer to that question myself. If Clemson face Miami this Saturday, what's the spread? Depends on where the game's at. I would say if it's in Clemson, Clemson's a slight favorite. If it's in Miami, Miami would be a slight favorite. Yes, Adam Randall's out with a broken toe. He's going to miss a few weeks. I knew I was missing somebody. His K Park might still be a little banged up. He might not be fully 100%, but there's a lot of guys not fully 100%. Once you get a few weeks into the season. Clemson needs cornerbacks the size of Hampton. Yeah, I'm never going to be one to question Mike Reed evaluation. He gets the benefit of the doubt every time with me. 100%. Best cornerback coach in the country, in my opinion. Antonio looks noticeably faster this year. Looked really good in the slot. Yes, man, he has taken a big jump. We didn't get to see it last year since he was hurt, so we don't know what kind of jump he would have taken from freshman to sophomore. But from freshman to junior, he has taken a massive jump. And he's a guy that's playing with a lot of confidence. I think when you play with a lot of confidence, it lets you play faster, more free. And man, he as good and explosive as Wesco has been. If I'm the quarterback of that team and I got to have 10, 15 yards, it's Antonio I'm looking for. I mean, he's just been that guy this year so far. Just heard Pete Rose passed away. That's why they keep playing Pete Rose stuff on my television. Maybe now they'll let him in the hall. Sucks, man. One of the best baseball players I ever watched play. Kimbe Mutombo passed today, too, so that's 2 today, man. Neutral site like Charlotte. What do I think the spread would be? If we're talking neutral site in Charlotte, I could see if it was played this weekend, I think Miami would be a slight favorite. And I'm not a point spread expert by any stretch. So take that for what it's worth. But if it were played this weekend in Charlotte, maybe 2.5, 3.5 points, I'd probably lean Miami. with cage speed, and it gives other options. Why don't we see the jet sweep used more like we used to? I've said many times I'd like to see some more jet sweeps, especially now when you got you got a guy like Tyler Brown, Troy Stellato, guys that can actually execute the sweep and execute it successfully, or the jet sweep. Maybe even Cole Turner. We've seen it, you know, once a few times, but not nearly as much as we used to. Um, if you're asking me why, it's different offense. It's the best answer I got for you. Never in the Hall of Fame till shoeless Joe Jackson is. Rose broke the rules. Jackson never did. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other. If it wasn't for the defense, Stanford was. I'm about blind. I'm having a hard time seeing what that emoji is there. Stanford was moving the ball, kind of concerning. Yeah, I've touched on this earlier. It was the pass defense was extremely good. I thought their quarterback made a couple of terrible decisions down deep in Clemson territory, but Clemson's inexperience at end is kind of especially Saturday showed up big time. They had a lot of problems getting the edge set, and it opened things up on the outside. And Stanford had a lot of room to run. Those guys have got to be better, getting their eyes in the right spot and not getting sucked in, covered up, and leaving the outside open. And I think getting Peter Woods back will help mitigate some of that. And it's also good for those guys to get out there and do it and see where they're making mistakes and learn from it, grow from it. Again, I said I touched on this earlier. I think AJ Offer is going to be a really good end. Once he gets developed, and I think you got the right coach in place now to develop some of those guys. Sure would like to see Maffa start to really get some yards, but I'm not seeing the big impact with him over Shifley. First thing, you've not had a game yet in which you need to really lean on him. So they've not had to run him a lot. He's only had 33 carries all season. He's averaging 8.6 yards a carry and 95 yards a game, despite the fact that he's averaging less than 10 carries per game. That's pretty good. But they not need him to come in and take over a game because they've had so much success passing the ball. No need to wear that guy down before, when you don't need to. Love the way old Pat Henry is playing. He's a stud. He is developing that nicely, man. And we're talking about a guy that was a receiver in high school. So he's acclimating very fast. He's just a redshirt freshman. Sometimes when guys transition from receiver in high school to tight end in football, it takes them a while to get the blocking and stuff down. Well, can't remember. Olsen might not have redshirted last year. I don't think he redshirted. He might just be a sophomore. But Henry is, man, his blocking has come such a long way in a short amount of time. It's impressive what he's been able to do, and we can see what he brings to the table in the passing game. Stat rankings this year, so offense is much improved. Most every category, top 20 or 30. Defense much worse. Some categories below 100. Yeah, but I also think the defensive stats are skewed due to playing so many backups in those two games and then a whole quarter against Stanford. But, the first half run defense, I don't care what the stats say, against Stanford was pretty bad. But, yeah, the offense, man, is just – it's night and day better. When you can hit some explosives, it just opens everything else up. No, DJ will not start Saturday. He's got a broken pinky. Perfect timing. He's expected to miss multiple weeks. Do I think veteran receivers are getting jealous of the freshman receivers? Brenny looked like he was pouting. No, I don't think they're getting jealous, and Brenny should have been pouting after those two big drops he had. Good for him to come back with the touchdown catch on a ball that wasn't, on target right after on the same drive after those two drops. But no, I don't think they're getting jealous. I do think those freshmen have come in and pushed all those other guys to be better. Adam Randall was probably playing his best ball right before, heck, he had one of his better games playing on a broken toe the other last week. So I will say that, but do I think they're getting jealous? No. Do I think we might see a guy or two enter the portal after the season? Probably, because they ended up getting passed by on the depth chart. Doesn't mean they're jealous, just means they want to go somewhere they can play. Do you think the new FSU QB will give FSU a spark, or have they quit on the season? I think that if they thought making the change to Brock Glenn would have that much of an impact, they'd have done it before last Saturday night. I mean, you're already 5 games in. Your quarterback come into the game having thrown – I think he had thrown the same amount of touchdowns and the same amount of interceptions going into that game. I can't remember for sure, but right now he's thrown, I think it's 4 touchdowns, is it, and 6 interceptions after that game. And he threw 3 the other night. I think the fact that it took Norvell so long to pull the plug tells you exactly what he thinks of those other quarterbacks on the bench. My guess is the freshman's not ready. Otherwise, if it's me, I'm going to him already and preparing for next year. Brock Glenn, we already saw him. We saw Florida State's offense last year with him at the helm once Jordan Travis went out. It wasn't very good, and that was with better offensive line play and better receiver play. I do not expect it to create a spark. At the same time, this is a game Florida State's probably going to get up for. It's in Tallahassee. At the very least, you think that those guys got some pride left. We'll see. If I'm Clemson, I'm not overlooking that team by any stretch. Why doesn't Noble Johnson play at wide receiver? Noble missed all of the spring, got in a wreck. He was one of the ones that, got hit with reckless driving over the offseason. So a little bit of that might be him being in the doghouse. But, he missed all of the spring, and he's been out-recruited. So those are the 2 obvious answers there. Clemson jumps on them early. That would be the key, man. If Clemson can jump on them early, it'll be game, set, match. We've already seen it. They've they've already cashed it in a couple of times when they've gotten down early in a hole. To me, that'll be the key, man. Can the longer you let those guys hang around, you're starting to play with fire. Let's see if I missed anything before we bounce out of here. Somebody asked about a 2026 recruiting update. Not really outside of the guys that have been visiting. I don't think there's anything imminent with any of those guys. Do I think we'll see more Sammy Brown with the ones? I think he could help against the run. Like I said a little while ago, if Woods isn't back this week, I think one option is to start, going with more three-backer sets. Saw that a little bit in the third quarter there against Stanford. But if Woods is back and they decide to stay with, they've been playing mostly nickel for the most part, you probably see more of the same with Brown rotating in a little bit more than he has been. Larry says, I thoroughly enjoy watching the show on Monday night. Much appreciated. Wonder if many Knowles players who aren't going to NFL next are motivated to play and win, even if it's Clemson. That's a very good question. Very good question. A lot of these guys consider this a rivalry game. Some people do, some people don't. I kind of tend to look at it that way. I tend to think this will be one they'll get up for, and I think it's important for Clemson to kind of go out there and not screw around and let those guys hang around too long. Go out there and do what they've been doing, put some points on the board early, and build you a lead. And if you do that, I think those guys might mail it in. Appreciate everybody that tuned in. We'll be right back here next Monday, 7 p.m. We'd very much appreciate it if you hit that like button. We'd appreciate it even more if you'd hit that subscribe button. Got a lot of recruiting interviews that have come out in the past few days. I got several more set to come out over the next few days. We hadn't even talked about the basketball commit Brownell landed yesterday. Top 100 guy. Big time get. Talked to him for a while on the phone yesterday. That story's already on the site. A lot of people don't know it. He's the top quarterback in the class in his state. So he had a decision to make at some point, or he thought he was going to have a decision to make at some point. Chase Thompson is who I'm talking about. He was getting some interest from the football schools, took a couple of game day visits, then he just exploded, on the hardwood over the summer. And he said after he did that, all the football schools quit calling because they knew he was going to play basketball, so they kind of made a decision for him. Although deep down he said he always knew it was going to be basketball. Third commit of the 2025 class for Brownell. That'll probably I don't see him taking any more in this class. Another good signing class for him, man. He's starting to get in the groove there, man. That's a big time get. Chase Thompson, 4-star forward, 6'8", top 100 guy. Anybody out there still without power, man? Hopefully it's back on soon and you're not in the dark too long. Just being up there without power for 2 days, I can't imagine it being 3, 4, 5 days a week. You guys are all in my thoughts, man. I hope you're all out of the dark soon, and I really hope everybody came through unscathed. I mean, again, I saw a lot of damage on the way out yesterday. Hopefully that was none of you guys. I hate it for who it was. Mother Nature, man. Can't beat Mother Nature. Next Monday, 7 o'clock. Don't forget, we'll be right back here talking Clemson, Florida State. Unfortunately, not going to get that Clemson DJ matchup. See y'all then.